Well,
Getting ready to go in 3, 2, 1. Hi, and welcome back to Alternative Perspectives with Naldo, right here. And we have Sule Joseph today, of Sule Joseph and Associates. He's a counseling psychologist, specialized in dealing with children.
and families.
And well, families and children, yes. And coming out of the pandemic, well, we're nearly out of it, you would say, where schools are getting ready to open back, children are getting ready to go, to head off to school to do exams and whatnot. We wanted to touch with Sule today to find out how these children could cope in terms of dealing with the exams, having been down for a few months, and now having to get back up and head back out there. For the SEA students, for the students who would be doing CSEC, CAPE, and these things. And then also we want to touch with him to find out what is going to happen with the younger ones when they go back out to school after 5 months home. Right? So let's see what the pressing matter at hand right now, Mr. Joseph. Children who are getting ready for SEA.
Whew. All right, now I don't want to sound like I'm ranting on your program, but before I get into that, there's some things that I wanted to actually use as what do you call it, precursor to the discussion.
Okay.
And for a while now, I have had a stance that SEA should not exist.
Okay.
Right? I believe that it is almost an academically abusive system that structures children into streaming, a school streaming type structure system, educational system, that has not proven to be the best for the country, right? You would have had some time ago, we have seen some people protesting and rioting and that kind of thing and so on, frustrated with inequalities. And this type of educational system with the SEA helps fuel that kind of inequality and that kind of system.
Okay.
Because the people who have less access to certain types of resources usually do poorly at SEA, are streamlined into schools that are poorly funded, have poor resources, don't necessarily have what the other schools that might be streamlined in a particular direction have. And so they already get a head start at life. They are the ones generally who parents already have money and are in good jobs and so on and that kind of thing. And I think it's a system that perpetuates inequality to begin with.
Okay.
I am a strong advocate, right, for eradicating the SEA structured system.
Okay, so I want to pitch something to you here. In Grenada, for instance, because of the pandemic, they didn't have their version of SE this year. They took the results from, let's say, Standard 1 to Standard 3 combined, and then the results from Standard 4, Standard 5, but they call it grade. They graded differently.
Right,
but
yeah,
basically, they used the marks that the children would have used or would have gathered going to school, going to primary school, to choose what school they would have attended. How you feel? So you're saying we should go to something like that?
Actually, I'm saying that we should not reinvent the wheel. We should look at systems that exist that are very successful. And for that, I'll turn to Finland.
Okay.
And in Finland, what they do essentially is they zone you. So education is zonal. Now,
but that will also require having good schools in each zone.
So, correct. What it means, therefore, is that the child from Arima, whose parents went to, I don't know, convent or something, or some prestige school in Port of Spain, and they have resources, or the child from Valsain, right, who now has to send their child to, let's say, a school in Curep, because Curep is the closest school, or Mount Hope.
Right.
What was Mount Hope Junior Secondary, now Mount Hope Secondary, and a child from Valsain, parents from Valsain has to send their child there. What now? Then what you're going to find is you're going to find those parents pumping resources into the school.
Oh, okay.
You're going to find, all right, so you're going to find now, it's going to take a restructuring of the system, because now teachers should also come from within, closest to the environment of the school as well, so that the teachers will better understand the culture the students are coming from. So when you take a child, let's say for example, a teacher for example, and you bring the teacher from Shogunas, Penal, South, and then you bring them to Mokarapo or Success, right? And this is not necessarily to be racist, but ethnicity has to come and play into the mix, right? And you bring an East Indian teacher, let's say from Penal, who is accustomed to having when she says to students, this is the homework. Everybody does the homework. They bring it back, and everybody rushing to show Miss the homework in the morning. When she says sit, everybody sits. But when you bring Miss from Penal and you send her, not much teaching experience, straight out of college, you send her to Success Laventil, and not to knock this school, I have done plenty work in Success. There are brilliant students there, but the culture is very different. Mm-hmm. And now this teacher is not familiar with the culture. She's not from around the area. She has to travel very far in the morning. It means she has to get up early. She already stressed having just to get to work. So when she says, this is the homework, and most of the students don't do it, that's not a culture she's accustomed to. How does she deal with that? She's frustrated and she's stressed. Mm-hmm. She can't relate to the structure. When she said, well, why people didn't do the homework? Well, we didn't have no current. If we don't have current on a Wednesday, you should know that. You know what I mean? And so that is the culture of the neighborhood and the environment and so on. So I've always advocated as well that teachers should come from the area. Teachers should be familiar with the needs of the area, the culture, and so on. And it helps with connecting with the students and with the students being able to connect with the teacher as well. So that it will call for a total restructuring of how we view the education system. No more of this prestige this and this prestige that and so on or whatever.
But don't you think that because the country we live in, and let's be real, we have a country that kind of capitalist mentality, I think we'll find more private schools popping up. I think because the people who don't want their children to go to those schools in the first place, they'll say, no, I send them a child in. And then obviously it will have oversubscription to the private schools. So to the SAC and the Northgate and these schools.
Great.
So then...
Great. So we have smaller numbers of students in the public schools, smaller classrooms, so the teachers could focus on teaching students on one-on-one. Great.
Okay. I mean, I definitely need to put all sides, to the table. All right. So that's how you feel about the SCA situation.
Yes.
So now that, because for instance, we have different situations here. I have a nephew who's doing SCA, and his teacher only stopped or gave them a rest last week. So just about 2 weeks before they go back out to school. They haven't stopped since April, right? And now he's going back in again, next full month. Do you think that burnout is possible for students like that?
Well, let me answer. Short answer to that question is yes. Long answer to that question is the burnout didn't start this year. Based on how our system is structured, we prepare students for exams from standard 1. From standard 1. So they have national tests and things to write. So we get them in an exam thinking mood. So what the end result is, we create a bag of nerves and students who cram and prepare and rush and so on for an exam. And we have an exam-oriented culture in education. So it is not learning for the purpose of learning, for self-development, but learning for the self-preparation for the exam.
Right. And I mean, I have my reservations when it comes to exams and academic work because of that. I think a lot of people learn for exams. They actually can't bring these things into real life. They can't.
Critical thinking is correct. Yeah. So when you to become critical thinkers is something totally different. And our system is not geared towards generating critical thinkers. So when you look at the US, we like to follow the US for all the wrong things. The US system generates critical thinkers. So you will find a lot of inventors and people coming up with solving issues and so on. We don't do that. Our system is geared towards, and that would be all the way back to maybe even if we can consider slavery, our system is geared towards generating our workforce.
Right.
And our workforce that is to work for somebody. So that is what our system is geared towards. So after you rush and prepare for exams, next thing you know, you find yourself in a stream, and the only thing you go into is heading towards somebody else's job to work for them. Right? And the chances are, the persons who you're heading to work towards, they weren't under the same pressure. They was under the same pressure you under. They know their family have money, they know this, they take them wasn't. they're not stressing as much as you were stressing.
You know, it might have been a situation where they get 2 passes and I know, you know,
And then your boss.
Right, yeah.
Right? So, yes, very much so. Very much so. Since standard 1, we have been pushing our students towards exams. And so, with the national test, we have standard 1, standard 3, and then SEA. While it may not originally have been for that purpose, because originally I believe the national test was supposed to not be for the students, but to see if the teachers are able to teach the content properly
Right.
to the students and so on. It's no longer, now you have students in standard 1 going to lessons. So you're going lessons in standard 1.
Right, yeah.
Right? So you can do better in the test. You're going lessons in standard 3, so you can do better in the test, and then you're pushing your hard for this SEA. I definitely think we need to shift from that system.
Okay.
It put a lot of undue pressure on the students, on the children. It put a lot of undue pressure, even on parents, because parents now convinced that if your child don't do well in SEA, you ruin your whole child life.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, and then we have parents who live and who base their existence on what school their child passes for in SEA.
But again, that's the culture. The culture is the parent must be proud to say, well, yeah, my child went so and so convent, or my child going so and so, college or whatever,
No, I think the whole system, what it also does, it puts the children who aren't able to function under pressure in a kind of disadvantage, because you know, have some children who are real bright, exceedingly bright. But once they sit down in an exam room, you understand? For some reason, they would freeze up. So, do you think that might help children like that in that case? Like, removing that whole SEA idea, giving them more time to develop, might be able to function better under pressure at a later stage in their lives?
Well, yes. Even more so. Einstein said, testing a monkey and a whale, or no, a monkey and a whale, I think it was, a monkey and a whale, by climbing a tree, the whale will always fail. Right? It doesn't mean that the whale is foolish, is incompetent, or cannot learn. It just means that the test is biased towards the monkey.
Right.
And we have some persons who are very good at chalk and talk. And chalk and talk is our main technique, which is going on the board, writing down information, the children write it down, and then regurgitate it. Right? As a matter of fact, in sociology, we call that the jug and mug theory principle. They pour the information into the student regurgitate the information just as they get it. So one pour it and one pour it out. And that's it. No added information, no assessment of the information, none of that. And some are good at doing that, and some have to stop and process. Some people might stop and say, but no, this isn't making sense to me. I can't see why, And we will then, these test scores will say of this person who is attempting to be a critical thinker, that they're not intelligent. And the person who could just follow instructions, jump when they say jump and fall when they say fall, will show high marks. And they may say, this person is highly intelligent based on our current system. So our current system is what is at fault for identifying and labeling children incorrectly, because the system does not capture the various intelligences that students have. So even if we give it time may not be the differentiating factor, because we have differences of intellect.
Right.
We have some people who are geniuses with their hands. They send them to make something, and in no time they just look at it and they make it. Is that person a fool? Is he not intelligent because the chalk and talk doesn't work for that person? You know what I mean? Is the person who has a perfect tone, who could hear music and know it one time off the bat? Is that person a fool because they take them longer to calculate math?
So then let me ask you this: do you think that creativity is something that a child is born with? Do you think that creative gene is something that a child is born with? Because I mean, I was telling somebody the other day.
Imagination. I think children are definitely born with imagination.
Because the thing is, a creative child will always have a difficult time of competing with an academic child, a child who is academically inclined. Because I think they say one has more logistical skills and one have more creative skills or something like that. Do you think that is real? Do you think that?
Well, I think there's a misnomer. All children are academically inclined. All. It's like everybody could do math, right? Some just naturally adept at it, just because brain chemistry and so on, and proclivities. Some children just think it faster than others. Also teaching style. So I would use a perfect example of myself, right? I did math 3 times, right? The first time I did it, I made zero to little effort at all, right? My math teacher, brother, right? The math teacher used to come in class and say, Sule, assume the position. That position is outside the class, right? so the first time I wrote math, I made zero effort. I made no effort. I guessed through the multiple choice, and I did a little bit in the long paper, and then I got 4. I said, but wait. A 3's a pass, and I mean, I got 4, and I did absolutely nothing, then, I'm not as bad as I thought. And it took, I met a gentleman who was not that much older than I was. But he started to, as a matter of fact, he was a math teacher, a gentleman from the Queasy. Right? In Sawa, yeah, so yeah, right there, the Queasy. And he started to explain math to me in a way that I just never, like I started to see the matrix. It became practical now. So you say, hold this, hold that. And then he started giving me things in my hand to hold while he talking and explaining and so on and that. And that's what, I just never saw it like this. You know what I mean?
I understand.
So he came to me at a level that it made sense to me. And so it became practical to me, and in my mind it made sense to me. And so I went back at it. And the second time I got a 2. But I went back at math again because I said, well, if I understand it so well, I want a 1. You know what I mean? So it is that, I think it is not that persons are necessarily not inclined, but it's just the level. It just takes a different technique of teaching some children for them to be able to process and assess the information different.
All right. Now, jumping into the younger ones, because definitely we have the younger ones that would have been home. A lot of them probably not even engaged, because not all the teachers were doing online classes or sending work. I've gotten a lot of reports of those things, right? Where there'd be some teachers say that's not a job, they didn't have a computer, whatever.
The argument was that it was optional. I mean, they asked teachers to do it.
Right.
Not mandated.
Right. So, for them, home 5 months, I mean, that's something that most of them would have never experienced before. Once they reach probably about 3 years old, you would have never stayed home for 5 months before you're back in a class.
Correct.
What do you think, how do you think that would impact them and the teachers going forward?
All right. Let us say, as an example here. You ever played Call of Duty?
A little bit, just a bit.
Just a little bit, right? Good. So you played, you introduced to Call of Duty. You played it the first time you played it. Most people not real adept at it. There's a lot of buttons you have to memorize and so on and that kind of thing. And so you get better the more you play it, right? But what happens if you take, let's say, while getting better, you take a 5-month sabbatical? You take 5 months off
I mean,
not playing any kind of... Not playing
you'll get rusty, you'll get rusty.
Correct. Now, what happens if you take 5 months off, you get rusty, and at the end of that 5 months, you have a tournament?
Yeah, well then, you're definitely going to be... Because one of the major concerns people have is that the children now be moving into a new class. Right? Not finishing the last syllabus, and then moving up. So do you think it's a matter the teachers will need to go back and just go back through the previous syllabus, whether it be quickly, and then catch up? I mean, or are some teachers going to say, well, boy, I know I work and I come here to teach standard 3 work, I teach in standard 3 work.
Well, I can't speak to the mindset of the teachers. I can, but what I can speak to would be what the research and what the textbooks have said about children's minds. And while a child's mind is very elastic, it stretches and so on, You also have to remember that children's attention span and retention, information retention and thing is a bit short,
Right.
right? So you can do, the average child, you do work with them in the morning, and by the time you talk to them in the evening about the work they did in the morning, they don't forget.
Yeah.
There's 5 months. You know what I mean? And at the end of the 5 months, you are asking them to, after 5 months of not playing Call of Duty, you're asking them now to join a tournament and win.
Because I think that could add some frustration to these,
Of course.
younger ones.
Of course. And level stress. Because now you're asking them to compete against other people like themselves who may not be prepared. Some persons might be. You might have, some children who come from very structured backgrounds where the parents make them do work
Right, during
the period. But then there's another issue to consider within that. That would have been 5 or 6 months where you remember when you prepare for an exam, our culture, while you might be doing lessons all the time, when the exact period, there's a time frame where the exam come in, where you drop all extracurricular activities, your tunnel vision, and everything becomes about this exam. I relate that to our fight or flight response. You know, when you're doing bio or integrated science, they talk about a fight or flight, right?
Yeah, that remind me. Definitely that remind me.
Right. They talk about the fight or flight response. And what it basically means is when your body is pumped with adrenaline, naturally, right? Your body started to pump with adrenaline and other chemicals and so on, cortisol, which is a stress hormone. Your pores might raise and you enter into a fight or flight response. One or two things happen. You either fight and the blood that pumps into your heart is to help you move quicker and so on, your muscles limber up and so on. Or it does the same thing but in preparation for you to run for your life, right? But it's a heightened state of arousal. When we go into exam mode, it's something almost similar like that happens, where you get into this tunnel vision, things slow down and so on, and you get into this heightened sense of functioning. But we're not designed as human beings to do that over a long, extensive period.
Right.
It's supposed to be for short periods, and it has been designed for survival.
Yeah.
Right? So you hyper-focus, you settling thing, you do that for the period that for this period, the average human being is just not designed to be like that 24/7.
Yeah, to continuously, to be like that. I mean, definitely there will be some level of burnout. And I mean, I understand the mode you're talking about, because most times, whatever you do in that mode, sometimes when you finish, you're like, wait, I do believe I did, all that in that period of time.
It's like an assignment. I am certain at some point in your schooling years, you would have left an assignment till last minute. And when your body kick into that zone, you up whole night, straight into the morning, you just going at it until you finish with the assignment.
And then you watch it and you say,
I produced this.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when you're done, is when you feel relaxed and your stress drop and thing, you're like, what could you imagine? Doing that assignment for 5 months straight? I just said, right? 5 months straight, you focused on this assignment and you push it. The level of burnout is crazy. That kind of level of burnout could cause burnout or could cause anxiety type related mental stresses on the day. So what could have happened is a child goes totally blank on the day.
Right.
Total blank. And that total blank would be just because that level of stress and anxiety that would have been a build-up over that long period could cause just a total breakdown on it.
All right. So considering that most children would have, especially the ones who do SEA, they would have been fully prepared, because remember the place lockdown basically a week before SEA, right? But I mean, some people kept their children engaged, some of them let them relax. Moving forward, just about a month ago before SEA, how or what do you think parents should do? Do you think they should let them know, well, okay, go light, ease up? Like for instance, as I go back to my nephew, we were saying the other day, we go 5 islands, we mark up new 5 islands, there we go, and my sister says, after SEA. And my thing was, let them go and just breeze out, get his stress out. So, I'm being in a more relaxed state when that time reach. So, how you feel about that?
I don't have the research to comment on that, to say specifically if doing activities that reduce stress and so on prior to it will make a big difference. I don't have the numbers and I don't have. So if I speak on that, I'm speaking purely from my perspective and not necessarily from a backed psychological stance, right? For me though, I would try as much as possible to reduce the strenuousness and the stress of the exam and the tension of the time frame. If I would have the child totally relaxed in a state where like it's vacation, maybe not, but not under that level of pressure and stress and frustration. You're talking about children who are 10 and 11 years here, right? With that amount of pressure and stress on children, you can get what you call education fatigue or burnout. Okay. Where you find the child is doing so well in primary school or so well in secondary school, and when they get to university, they're done. They're just fed up. They had enough. I said,
yeah, there's enough.
Yeah,
we don't. I understand what you're talking about. Yeah, while we're on the topic, things like TikTok and these social media things that they would have been having their way with over this period of time. What is your take on that? Leave them, let them do what they have to do. Not necessarily SEA children, but the younger ones. Leave them, let them TikTok, or the ones who might be in secondary school and not ready for CSEC yet. Leave them, let them TikTok, or we should be trying to cut down that screen time.
That is a matter of parenting, yes, and parenting decisions. So the parent to make. Each child is different. You ought to know your child. You have some children who could self-regulate very well. I was not one. You have children who need a parenting figure to regulate them. If my mother let me go online for 3 days straight, I was going online for 3 days straight. That's yours, right? So I needed a regulator. So you ought to know your child. What I can tell you about short snippet videos, like at one point there was Vine. That was a big thing. TikTok has now come and replaced Vine. But those type of short snippet videos, what they do is over time they help reduce the attention span. So what it does is it gives hyper focus for short periods. So children now only want to see things that are very active, colorful, bright, and short.
Right.
At one point, if I could have gotten a cliff notes of a book, I wouldn't read the book because I say the cliff notes, but the cliff notes is 30-something pages.
Yeah, I did.
The average child now, the way they function based on TikTok and thing, if it's not half a minute, they don't want to see it, so they want to. Cliff notes too long.
No, the thing is, this is one thing that's based on perspective, and obviously we know we're into our next generation, seeing these things. So I think that we can't really determine how it will go. Right now, people have done different studies and whatnot, but my thing is this: if we leave them to do what they have to do for their generation, rather than we try to force the way our generation operated. So, I mean, things different. If you understand what I'm saying, they are going into a different generation. They're going to have to deal with people who have that shorter attention span than we trying to say, no, this is not good for you. You shouldn't have all the screen time, while other children get any screen time, and then they'll be in a different world. Let's be real. So you could end up, you think you're saving a child, but then the child is in a world of children who had unlimited screen time.
Well, let me throw this at you then. Parenting in general, right? We parent based on how we were parented.
Right. Which is awful, but
I mean, it have a book.
Right,
There's no text. So, and nobody could argue that point because that's the truth. Even if there's something that you say you will not do, you're not doing it because your parent did it to you now, right? So you say, my mother used to cut my tail up and down the place, bust my ass, blah, 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 blah. And I am not going to, I'm not going to hit my child. But you're not going to do it because of how your parent parented you.
Right, yeah.
Right?
And which it might have been necessary at some point, but then you didn't do it because you didn't want to
exactly.
parent.
So based on how your parents have parented you, shapes a whole lot of how you go to parent your child. You can say, some of these things work for me, and I turned out just fine, so you're going to do that on your child. Right? My dad didn't really give much licks and stuff, however, But when a man tell you something emotionally, you feel like you're broken inside, you know? You know what I mean? And so, based on how I have grew up, I don't think I may hit my children, but you know, I know by the time I get them a tongue lashing, you know, they might feel to park up, you know. So it's I would say it is based on how you were parented, and so I wouldn't knock the persons too much on who don't want the children engaging so much contact hours with screens, because that's not how they were parented. If they were parented with a lot on going outside and things, then they will encourage the children to go outside more. One of the things that we are losing, though, I will say, is that we are losing that connectivity, that face-to-face connection. And imagine we had COVID, and the issue with a lot of students was not that they're not seeing their brethren, you know, because they're accustomed to that. They are accustomed FaceTiming, they are accustomed WhatsApp phone call, and that was normal for them. The issue is that they couldn't go online outside. You know, they can go to movie talk and they can do these things, but the communication aspect of it, they have been prepared for COVID apparently all their life.
which is, I mean, because like the other day I was telling my younger daughter, I was like, do you know that we were born before Google? And she couldn't believe that. She thought Google was here from the beginning of time.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
I remember when Google came here.
Yeah, so
Google and Facebook.
Yeah, these things came while we were already big. You understand what I'm saying?
I was in university.
Yeah, so, you know, there's also a perspective. You know, it could be very funny. And for me, I tend to look at things as far ahead as I can. So I wouldn't be robbing my younger ones of opportunities, because I'm just trying to stick to what I know. So I try to tell, no, my thing home is, you have a phone, right? My both daughters have phones. Don't ever tell me you don't know something. But you tell me, well, they can't find the information. But you have phones. If I ask a question and you don't know, go and Google it. Right? And till my little daughter will tell you, if her mother says something and, well, I don't know. She said, well, mommy, Google it. You understand? And she is 8 years old. So you understand what I'm saying? So that is why, for me, I am not too hard on them at screen time. I must say both of them likes going outside, interacting, going with their cousins, having a time. So we don't have to actually regulate that with them. They still, you know, that's...
Self-regulate.
Yeah.
They self-regulate. So I don't know, you have to know your child, how you're dependent on how your child... Yeah, each child is different. You don't have to do that with yours. Some children, you might have to say, all right, enough of that now. Time to go outside or go and check so on. So you wouldn't believe I have parents who bring their children, their teenage children, to me because they all they do is play game whole day every day. Nothing else. For this whole 5 months, no homework, no nothing, game.
Yeah, but I mean, not saying that is okay, but let's just look at the guy who won the Fortnite thing and how much you like $5 million US or something like that.
Everybody always bring it up as an
example. No, I mean, it's
yeah.
a reality, right?
Right,
I mean,
right.
There is money to be made from gaming.
Right.
So
there's money to be made from Lotto.
True.
You know.
But I think you have more control of the game now. If we have this problem with gaming and realize you're really not good at the game, I'd be like, back up the game. Take it off. It makes no sense. You understand? But if I see some potential in it, because I mean, that child could end up becoming a developer.
Well, that is what a lot of children argue, that they want to be developers, but or at least professional game players, so they play, playing games for a living and so on. But that requires a little bit more than just liking to play game and not willing to get up, because to get to that level of developer, to get to that level as professional game player, you kind of had to get up and stop playing game at some point and go on there. You know what I mean? So to me, you have to look at, okay, is this something that you love or are you an addict?
Right.
Right? So, and there's a thin line, because there's a thin line between people who are obsessed with something and an addict, having an addiction. Because I think the people who are obsessed are usually the people who change the field.
Okay.
You know, they go into it and they change whatever because you're obsessed with this, you want to know every aspect, But when you have an addiction, it's something like, it's a craving, you just have to do this, and that's everything else don't matter to you, you just have to do it. It's not, you're not looking to improve, change. you know, a heroin addict can looking to make the recipe better.
So,
you know what I mean?
So tell me something. What, you know, is there a way we can identify, you know, those traits? Like, you know, whether it be here in nature and say, no, boy, this could be better, or they should have done this, or just sit down. Is there ways we could identify that?
I'm certain I'm certain they have tests that could be developed, psychological assessments that could be developed to check, you know, off the top of my head right now, there are some guidance assessment tools that are used for career assessments. So you check to see what are your children's proclivities, or, you know, the propensities, what they like, what they're good at, you know, what comes naturally to them, that sort of thing, based on their personality. And out of that, you know, you get a line of things. It would be nice if within that, if you know you like gaming and thing, and you find that the IT technology, you know, the information technology industry is part of your choice. Developing is part of your choice. But to see a specific test to see if a child is an addict or you know, just obsessed, I can't think of one currently off the top of my head. There's probably an inventory for addiction. Maybe you could try.
Okay. So this is one of the major ones that I want to hit, and we'll look to wrap it up very soon. But I had to touch on this topic.
Hold on, hit that.
The Trinidad movement, the music, the influences it's having.
You mean this outside?
Well, yeah. or 19 or 17, or whatever it was. But the thing is, what is your take on it? Do you think that the music is having some sort of influence on the youth today, and even families? And when I say music, we'll deal with local, we'll deal with international. Do you think it is adding to the degradation of families and the minds of society?
All right. Let me start by saying this. This YouTube or wherever, I'm not sure where you put it. I listened to the Trinidad movement, Rebel 6, rest in peace, K-Lion, BIL, Belmont is love, rest in peace, my brother. Good. So I do listen to it. I mean, I don't listen to it 24/7. I find we have some interesting artists. This fella coming out of Arima, Zevi. You know, it's pretty all right as well. So I mean, I listen to, you know, I listen to some artists, Swan Dan, you know, Meds Boss has some all right songs. Jelano, I'm a big Jelano fan. So we have there's some good music. Now, having said that, again, I bring this down to parenting. All right? I am an adult. Usually, especially in males, yes, your brain development continues developing from teenage years until you reach about 25.
Okay.
And that's why you'd see with insurance agents and so on, your premium usually is up a certain percentage up until about 25. And after 25, right, because as a man up to age 25, your brain is still developing. And you find you start to now make more mature and, you know, logical type decisions. Make better decisions and so on. After your brain has developed, because the part of the brain that is still developing is your frontal lobe, where you use for processing and making those type of decisions, weighing consequence against desire and that kind of thing. What Freud calls your id, your ego, and your superego. Right? The id is the impulses, what you want to do. When you're a teenager, you're just doing it.
Right.
You want to skinny dip, you're skinny dipping. Right? You want to post half naked pictures up on Instagram or on your WhatsApp status, you're doing it. Right? The ego is that rationalized thought that says, you know, maybe you should do this, right? And that's the one that's going to be coming down harsh, like the parental voice, coming down harsh on you. And then the super ego is like societal expectation. That's the middle ground, right? So maybe you could put up a half naked picture yourself, but only show it to your friends now, block everybody else. You know?
With your close friends list.
Yeah, your close friends list, you know?
Yeah.
But as I said, this comes down to parenting. This comes down to parenting because when we identify that children's brains have not fully developed, then you can be somewhat influenced by what you consume. And so, just as though if when you consume a lot of fatty foods and things or whatever, chances are you're going to, even if you don't put on a certain weight, your cholesterol going and go up and so on, you are what you eat. Right? If you find yourself, I had a client recently, a very moody individual, and the particular client was a teenager, and they were obsessed with Eminem.
The artist?
Yeah.
Still? How that client know Eminem?
That was my question. But, yeah, the guy was about 16. So I was like, Eminem? What you know about Eminem? Right? And we get a little argument because he thought, he say Eminem was the best rapper ever. And I kind of had to school him a bit. But anyway, it was listening to Eminem, and he was able to, because he felt as though he related a lot of the pain and things that he made Eminem songs. And they rap. And so I'm saying you are what you consume. And if you consume that, even if you find yourself relating that a little bit to it, somehow what you consume affects and it impacts you, even if it doesn't make, even if you don't go out there and kill and shoot people, it plays and it imprints on your mind.
Right? And because my thing was this, right? When you hear, if a boy violate, excuse up the chick, listen, I really don't know the words, I've been honest. When that got popular, I was like, hold on. So anyway, but when you hear if a boy violate, excuse up the chick, if a boy disrespect, whatever. My thought process is, instead of somebody having a different, when something happens, somebody really violate them as they think or how they think they shouldn't be violated. And their first thought process will go to what is indoctrinated in them, which is that music. Now, I also acknowledge that if you're parented differently, right, you get a different reaction.
And that's why I'm saying parents, right?
Right? But, so, now, my argument has been why I think this music is a poor choice of music right now in this country is because I think we have a serious lack of good parenting in the country. And as a result, we have more impressionable minds, or minds that will probably be looking for something to digest, and they will digest all the wrong things. If that's the best way.
Well, let me put it to you this way. When we were in school, right, DMX was the order of the day.
Right.
DMX wasn't talking about loving your neighbor.
Well, yeah, but to be fair, here's
right?
two different.
When 50 Cents came out and 50 Cents was the order of the day, 50 wasn't talking about, selling stock and trading and being the best human being they possibly can be, and so for every generation, when you had the NWRA, even back then, it was a that whole song F the Police or
right,
so
Ice Cube and them. No, but my thing is this, right? I think parenting was much different then. I think they instilled way more values and morals in us. And let's be real, back then, if I was listening to a DMX CD, and my mother happened to take the headphone from me and put it on and realize there's cussing going on, she pelted me with the headphone, the Discman, the CD, you will get some slap, right? But no, you have children.
I think my mother broke mine. But,
right? You have children walking around in communities, walking through the houses. You have in the homes, the music is being played and it's being played uncensored. You understand the difference? So even though you kind of knew that here, I listen to this, but my mother and my parents are not accepting of it.
Yeah, it's not accepted, right?
It's not necessarily a good thing. Now, where it seems to be acceptable also, I think now we have more in our face the gang lifestyle. We're much closer to it than back then. Back then, I had no bad boy thing when I was in secondary school, but in the entire class, I didn't have much people who knew about that gang life and that gangster thing. So, but now, nearly everybody knows some gangster. Nearly everybody knows somebody with a gun. Nearly everybody knows somebody who was dealing up in some sort of illicit activity. So, they could relate it easier. I think that is the difference between then and now.
Well, part of what we have to look at is that this movement has been born out of our frustrated society.
Okay.
So the musicians from here, they're singing about their communities. So like, for example, when Rebel 6 was singing about the stresses and things, he's singing about St. Paul Street. He's singing about all the issues that are going on in St. Paul Street. Who's the boss for St. Paul Street? What murders would have occurred in St. Paul Street, a fight at this, or whatever fallouts and so on. Very real things for their community, right? Even though when they interview them and they say, well, you know, I'm singing it, but I wouldn't really handle a situation like that and so on or whatever, but they are singing born out of the frustrations of their community. I think that needs to be understood in every generation. There's new music that the older generation does not necessarily appreciate or think is appropriate for that generation. Right? In my mother's generation, that was Sparrow and them men, and my grandmother couldn't stand Sparrow, and they're too slack and dirty, and you know what I mean? And so, same thing as you say, my mother and them had to probably sneak to listen to a little Sparrow here and that kind of thing and so on. But for every generation, there is that. There's this gap of understanding. Mumble rap, I cannot understand it to save my life. Right? Trap music, I find, is killing the art form of rap. And so, that's my opinion. And when I speak to the youth now, I have to listen to it because that's what they relate to. That's what they understand. That's what they appreciate and so on. I agree with you that parenting has changed. I think it has changed greatly, I guess, because of media. And again, because TV now parenting children. So that brings back to your part where you talk about monitors and screen time and so on. I think a lot of screens parent children more than parents are parenting children now. Your parents have to work double, triple shift and them kind of thing, father not around or whatever. So you really have a lot of screens now parenting children as opposed to parents. The other issue is you have a lot more children parenting children, right? And whereas that would have been a common thread long
Mm-hmm.
ago, they were more firm and fervent on the values. You had less interrupting factors affecting children or different competing aspects for consumption. So, for example, you didn't have the internet feeding you certain type of information. They didn't have access so readily to pornographic material. They didn't have access so readily to songs openly with cussing and things like that. That was, you know what I mean? So, you're faced right now with a generation of children who have a lot more real world blasting in their face and streams.
Speeded.
Yeah, boy. And we in a generation that is a now generation, right? I found myself the other day being impatient with the microwave, and I was thinking, before this microwave, before this microwave, I used to have food on the stove, and I used to take 10 minutes and things to hot up my food. Now I call it because the 3 minutes take it forever to pass in the damn microwave, right? And we have a generation now that don't know anything about hotting up food on the stove, about the counter, the warmer. It's how to put the food in the warmer and that kind of. They know everything is instant, right? Information is instant, gratification is instant, everything is instant. Instant meal, instant coffee, instant juice, instant, everything instant. So how do we then try to reel them back and tell them, listen, this information is you're not ready or quite yet prepared for this information. It's difficult. You have a society who's singing, and I can't blame them for singing about their frustrations, but again, I say parenting, and I agree with you. Not that I think that, I come down on children for listening to it, because when I was a child, I snuck and listened to music that I shouldn't have either. But children should always know that listen, this is not something that will be appreciated by your parents, right? As you said, the competing values. There's a specific theorist, Eric Erikson, who looked at the development of human beings, and he says all through your life you have various conflicts. And one of the conflicts that children have, one of the areas that they call a conflict, is a conflict between external expectation of the society and expected values that parents would have taught them.
Oh, okay.
That conflict between trying to rectify what values your parents would have taught you and the external world expectation and conflicts, that conflict, your friends or your friends expect you smoking a cigarette, walking around with, that conflict there must be a conflict. And that resolving that conflict was help bring it into young adulthood and into early 20s and that kind of thing. Those are conflicts that have to be resolved. Now, what might happen is, if you don't have a strong value placed in by parents, then the expectation of the society
will now consume
will
you.
right. And instead of a conflict, instead of butting heads and trying to form an identity out of that, you will just be consumed by the society.
Okay. That is one of the best analogies, or one of the best ways I've ever heard anybody put it, to be honest with you. And it makes complete sense. So it shows how important it is for them to have a good foundation going forward. So even if, because for me, for instance, I'll give an example with me. You know, I was a real wayward youth, right? And because of how good my foundation was, yeah, I got in a lot of trouble. I did some shippiness, but at a point I was like, hey. Well, plenty, but you know, at some point, I was like, hey, nah, boy, nah. And you know, I found myself just getting back in line with where I was supposed to be. And as I say, I guess it's really, you know, it's setting the right foundation.
Yeah, foundation. Yeah, the foundation. So you explored as a teen, you would have explored your own route, where you wanted to go, your meander and so on and whatever. But at some point, because you had this foundation, it drags with you. There's no way you could escape the foundation. At some point, you could hit a boundary and say, listen, do I continue going this way, or do I accept this, you know? And then as the conflict, you hit a point where you have to say, oh, listen, this is what I know. This is what society is asking of me. You know, maybe what mommy wanted was too much, boy. That's too much. But what society wants too extreme too. And you find something in the middle ground. And that's how you form your personality. That's who you are. You take pieces of society, what they expect. This is okay, I find this is all right. You know, maybe your mother was a real churchy person and going out and party wrong and you can't go out. And society wants you out there, you know, you're a man, go out there and tackle woman like you're going mad. Right? And for you, you know, find a middle ground. You say, nah, I'll hold out one bird, we'll go, you know, I'll get married, I'll go to a party when I feel like, I'll dance and sing and have fun. Which isn't all acceptable for mommy. But it isn't all the craziness that society wants.
You're not upside down in the head.
Correct. Which is exactly comes back to what I was saying with the id, ego, and superego. You find a middle ground. Something that makes sense to you and so on, and you form your personality out of what that middle ground is for you. You're not consumed by either what the parent expectation is, because when you're consumed by the parent expectation, what you find is the child grows up to be very anal retentive, very unhappy, because eventually you realize it's not what you want for yourself. You are now a copy of somebody else, right? And you haven't formed your own personality. You haven't done things you wanted to do with your life. You're just doing what your parents want you to do.
But let me ask you a question though. Put it into that. Do you think that is a very big problem in the Caribbean? Because I think Caribbean parents really don't give children the opportunity to be themselves or to venture into what they want to venture. You know, they used to say, if you don't become a doctor, a lawyer, or something else, then you waste that time. You know, as far as a Caribbean parent would say.
I would say that Caribbean parents allow you to be yourself as much as yourself is what they want. So you are free to be yourself as long as you do what they want. But generally, I think that Caribbean youth, more so even black youth, have a rebellious streak, right? And that's why it's important for parents to put down values hard. Because the society and the rebellious side of that is going to come calling at some point. It's going to come calling. And it will come calling. But when you put down the values hard, you put that hard foot down on the values, it's kind of hard to stray too far now. At some point, you'll realize that, you know, there's a chain on your foot and your values dragging with you, you know, and you'll come back. There's a story my grandmother used to tell me all the time about somebody from Barrett area. I actually grew up in the area, actually, right? From 2nd Street, Malik. And she said there was this young man who started off getting trouble in school. And the grandmother used to go in school and cuss up the teachers and things for him and whatever. And then he dropped out of school eventually, and he started getting some little run into the police. She would go to the police station and tell, they're too wicked, or the police, and, make excuses for him and so on. He started robbing people in the area. She would make excuses for him, and eventually he got himself caught up in some murder. And the police held him. He asked to see the grandmother before he was sentenced, something, whatever. And he called the grandmother close to the jail and bit her ear off. And he told the grandmother, "That's for always telling me yes." He said, "When you should have told me no, and given me a foundation, you always told me yes." And because of that, I never got any strong values, any morals. So when we feel as though we're doing our justice to our children by saying yes all the time, by making up for some loss. So for example, let's say it's a single parent family and you figure the father not wrong, so you could, give the child more because of that. Yeah. You don't want to tell them, no, you overcompensate for the lack of something. You tell yourself, okay, this child not as academic as the other one, let me overcompensate. Those things really don't do well for children in the long run, because remember, you are, a child is more or less a blank slate kind of, and you helping paint the canvas. And if you allow chaos in the background of the canvas, right, whatever canvas they place over that will never matter, because in the back of it is always the chaotic canvas, you know what I mean? So you want a foundation basically that is one that is solid. And even if they become wayward, eventually, I think most times people kind of find and catch themselves, given time, men particularly.
Well, the man say that, anyhow, don't get into that part. Sule, thank you for your time, Mr. Joseph.
Yeah, my brother.
Right, just let people know where they could find you, whether it be online, phone numbers and whatnot.
All right. So, yes, you all can reach out to us on Facebook, IG, on email. So you can, on Facebook, it's Sule Joseph and Associates. On IG, Sule Joseph and Associates, right? Email, feel free to email us at sulejoseph.associates with an S @gmail.com. You can feel free to give me a call. We work with other psychologists as well, but you can call through me and we'll see who best fits or suits whatever issue you have at 472-5522. That number again, 472-5522. Right? Remember, Sule Joseph and Associates, helping make you the best you can be.
Nice. Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, my brother.